Hello, Ward 2 people. It is Council Member Wonsley, and it's Saturday, October 29th, and our office is super excited to come to you this morning with our first own budget, overview, just to give our constituents a clear understanding of some of the priorities that we're excited to move forward with, based on just engagement with our constituents across Ward 2 for several months now. As many of you know, as a socialist, my priorities in governance are all about working directly with working class people to advance your needs in City Hall. And our office is extremely intentional about fostering transparency and making sure that, our constituents have, standardized levels of information about, what's happening, why things are happening, and what can be done to address, any concerns or issues that are raised. And we're also doing this, in the midst of knowing some limitations around the city process. So, some clear goals for this meeting, of course, is to, within the context of what we can do within council, explain our priorities. And we'll absolutely be creating channels to receive feedback on these priorities that we're going to be overviewing today as well. I also want to note, the reason why we're doing this presentation is because we talked about before we came into office, really want to advance participatory budgeting. It's a democratic gold standard that we believe, all elected leaders should be leaning into in terms of how they allocate resources, especially working class people's resources, and making sure that those resources are going to towards the public institutions and public assets that actually create a quality of life for working class people. Unfortunately, Minneapolis as a city does not use participatory budgeting, and we can't insert it in one ward, and when we don't have a citywide structure. So just know, though, this is a model that we're going to continue to advocate for. We would like to see this be rolled out in every single ward. We would love to see the mayor carry this out. And, this is just our one way of trying to make sure that there's democratic, participation and input that's going to be reflected in our budget process. Let's start with our Ward 2 proposals for 2023. You will see on the slide here. And I do want to note, Director Kruger, who oversees our budget process, she's been an amazing leader at the city throughout this entire process. And we're going to be including links from the presentations that she's helped coordinate for City Council. We're going to include those in the description boxes so that constituents can go and see, basically budget briefings that's been made from every single department at City Hall, and also the overview of the mayor's budget. And we really thank Director Kruger for pulling all of that together and making sure that you all have the information that you need to know where your dollars are going. But segueing that to Ward 2 2023 proposals. We're currently at a phase, in August, Mayor Fry provided his budget proposal. We're now in the phase where council gets to weigh in and make amendments to reflect, the needs of our respective wards and constituents. So I'm going to share with you all my office tentative plan for amendments that we're going to propose, based on what we've identified as some top priorities amongst our residents. The first being, we want to make sure that our budget proposals is really emphasizing the basic needs of working class people and improving the overall quality of life for our constituents. And a case example about that is actually snow and ice removal. This has been the #1 issue across all 13 wards for several years. And it's very clear. We hear it in our 311 reports. We hear it in our emails and our voicemails that this is something that our constituents want us to do more work around. So we also want to acknowledge, in addition to our constituents, we have numerous community partners that have been also advocating for us to better improve our snow and ice removal, practices at the city, and to actually create an intentional program that's going to do that in a centralized way. And we want to give thanks to those partners, which have included our streets, the Lake Street Council. This is also something that's broadly supported by neighborhood groups, as well as residents of senior residential facilities. And we're really excited, to be working with Councilmember Johnson to fully advance this key priority, especially this budget cycle. In terms of a status of where it stands, ideally our office would like to see a fully funded municipal sidewalk, snow and ice removal program, be fully implemented at the city, so that all sidewalks are cleared like our streets. Again, residents have been advocating for this for several years. The city even did a winter maintenance study in 2019, and it identified that it will cost about $6 to $10 million to clear the streets, just along the city's pedestrian priority network. That's the major street corridors that we've, as a city, have identified as having, a great deal of traffic that is utilized by working class people, especially Black and Brown, and other communities of color. And these are the most used sidewalks, as well as this is where a great number of our transit stops are also located along. I have, pushed for this particular program through my role as a committee member on the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. The Public Works Department has agreed to begin directing existing resources towards clearing the pedestrian priority street network this winter, and we're really excited for that movement there. In the longer term, Public Works will also work with the Office of Performance and Innovation, and Neighborhood and Community Relations at the city on developing methods to work with property owners who are persistently not clearing their sidewalks. And this is really a first, important step towards developing a municipal snow program that we need. And they are going to be doing this with their existing budget for now. And I'm going to be working with them on additional budget allocations for 2023 and the 2024 budget. I'm really looking forward to also working with our Public Works Department as they identify a number of pilots that the city could be rolling out to, again, further its improvement of clearing sidewalks and bike paths across the city, especially also clearing sidewalks that's located around senior residential facilities. So they've identified a number of pilots already that we could be rolling out. And we're looking forward to working with them in the next several weeks to really identify what is a funding figure or a dollar figure that we can attach to some of those pilots that can be funded this budget cycle to then go into implementation come 2023 and 2024. So we're really excited. The next steps on that is Public Works Department is going to be coming to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee before the end of the year. We only have 2 more meetings left. And they're going to be sharing a fiscal analysis for what those pilots could cost. So again, council, myself, as someone who wants to champion this, we can then bring that proposed amount as a budget amendment. So we're really excited to be working with our Public Works leadership, as well as our staff in that department. And again, Councilmember Johnson, and helping, move this work forward. Our second priority includes public safety beyond policing. We have also gotten this lighting as a key priority across all 13 wards. If you watched the ARPA budget phase, which is where we in this past spring allocated the remaining dollars of our American Rescue Plan federal dollars, a great deal of that went towards lighting. And this is what we feel to be one of the easiest, clearest ways to increase public safety in ways that are not controversial and it's also cost efficient. We also want to emphasize that many of the concerns around lighting has centered around the University of Minnesota area. So we've been working with community partners and leaders at the University of Minnesota with neighborhood associations, as well as the special service districts, to really, talk about what does it look like to uh, intentionally invest more dollars into lighting. Right now, there is a huge backlog of lights that are completely out, and this is particularly taking place in student-heavy neighborhoods like Marcy Homes, Como, and Dinkytown. We were very happy to see that the mayor's budget allocated about $4.5 million in lighting allocations for both 2023 and 2024. But we do want to note also that these neighborhoods cannot wait 2 years for lights. In the presentation that we saw from Public Works and Infrastructure just this past week, many of the street light replacements or fixes, bulb replacements, many of those projects, especially around the university area like Como, Dinkytown, those won't be happening until 2024. And again, we think that many of these groups and many of our students in these neighborhoods can't wait just 2 years to really receive a easy safety solution right now. So right now we're working with the University of Minnesota to see how we can prioritize these lights, earlier, not just waiting until 2024. We also are working with them to identify, which streets or neighborhoods get lights, and I'm really, happy to know that our university partners are doing a great deal of gathering information around this. They've done their own lighting study that identifies, areas around the University of Minnesota area that needs light replacement. So we're happy to know that our university partners are also collaborating with Public Works and Infrastructure and the mayor's office to provide that information, because the mayor is the only one who can handle the programmatic pieces of the lighting. We can allocate the dollars, but we're also making sure that, as the executive side or the mayor's office looks at how they can administer these dollars, we're also making sure that they're being given the information that they need to make informed decisions around that process. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're working with our university partners and public works partners to really get a sense of how we can, better shape the rollout process of that lighting, especially around the university area. So we're going to move to our next major priority, which is, in addition to responding to our ward specific issues, we also want to be clear that Minneapolis is also part of a national and global conversation, especially around equity, around anti-racism, around policing, around environmental justice. Like, we are not on an island, and also even as council members, we are not on an island. We have a job to respond to our constituent needs, but we also have a responsibility to make sure, we are responding to national crises and developments that shapes the everyday realities of our constituents. So we want to make sure that as an office, we're also taking a proactive role in that work as well. One of those national events that I think has shaken, our nation to the core and has really compromised a quality of life for working class people was the overturn of Roe v. Wade just this spring. Now, working class people and our social movements are looking to cities and local governments to really take up the mantle where our federal government has failed to, secure the protections around bodily autonomy rights. So in that regard, our office has been major proponents of making sure Minneapolis remains to be a safeguard city for abortion rights as well as bodily autonomy. And in that work, our office partnered with Councilmember Chugside, who represents Ward 10, to make sure that our city was also putting our dollars towards that value as well. And we also work with community partners that have been advocating for bodily autonomy, reproductive rights, and abortions for a number of years to make sure that the city is doing everything that they can to safeguard this right for our residents. And in that work, we launched this summer a budget campaign to allocate $800,000 towards abortion rights fund that the city can administer to support, again, abortion rights and in improving access to abortion for our residents as well. We were excited to see that Mayor Fry allocated $300,000 in an abortion access fund. And we're really excited on the council side now to do whatever we can to allocate additional dollars to get us close to that $800,000, budget demand that our community partners really want to see us rise to the occasion too. And we want to give thanks to those partners that have included our Justice, Just Appeal, and again, Council Member Aisha Chuktai from Ward 10. Another way that we're looking to respond to national movements is we've also seen attack on our immigrant communities, particularly our undocumented communities. DACA just recently was also successfully challenged, and DACA has provided, protections for undocumented, residents who are living, playing, working, and making major contributions to our communities every single day. I'm very grateful, that at the city, we have at least created a program and division, the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, to really be a space that can help us be responsive to the needs of our immigrant and refugee communities. But they are doing this with very little resources and one staff, and the needs amongst our immigrant communities have exponentially grown in light of these attacks that's happening, not only at the federal level, but at all levels. Like even in Ward 2, just, a month ago, we had a mosque be attacked by white supremacists. So this is happening at all levels of government in terms of the lack of protections that's being provided to our immigrant and undocumented communities. So in working with some of our community partners that, again, have included our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs at the city, as well as MIRAC, which stands for Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. We're looking to advocate for one additional full-time employee, which will double the office's capacity and show that the city is taking a serious commitment to expanding our services to immigrant residents. So we're really excited about advancing that work on and really responding to some major national developments that impacts all of our constituents. And again, has compromised their ability to live really quality lives in our city. Our next priority is around, making sure that the council advances our constituent priorities under the government restructure that we recently passed. I want to note, this priority really looks like fully funding and fully staffing the legislative branch. Much of government restructure conversations really focused on organizing the executive side of the government, making sure that the staffing capacity and funding was present for the executive side, the mayor side, to have everything that they need. If you look at many of the presentations that we've had on government restructure while we're beefing up the executive side, the legislative side has been continuously anemic. It's just has not been developed in parity to, the executive side. So, in responding to this, we're really looking forward to working with our fellow council members to say, like, in order for us to really serve our constituents' best interests, we're going to need also adequate sufficient staffing levels and funding on the legislative branch of this new government restructure. We want to also, provide some context that, while this restructure just passed, it's also very concerning that, the mayor now has the mayor now can approve every single council request for information. Just this past week, the mayor vetoed council's request for data on the total fiscal cost of encampment evictions. So this means that we don't even have the ability to gather information again around key issues like encampments, responding to homelessness. These are top of the mind issues for our constituents, and that has been a top issue in our city for more than almost more than a decade now. And now we're not even given the resources and staffing capacity that we need to be able to get information to make better informed decisions around policy that can be responsive to these needs. So it's very clear that we're going to need our staff on the legislative side, the legislative department, to be able to be responsive to these needs, to be able to gather information for us so that we can make those proactive, policy decisions to really meet some of the crucial issues that impact working class people in our city. This means we will need a fully staffed legislative branch, which will have analysts, it will have planners and legal staff to help us take a good look at the issues that you most care about and translate them into good policy. A fully staffed legislative branch has also been included in the organizational charts that have been part of the mayor's government restructure presentation. But again, so far, nobody on council has initiated the creation of these crucial positions. And again, for several months now, the executive side has initiated the creation of all the positions that they need in order to carry out the work that they're supposed to do around administration and executing programs and services. We're not having that on the legislative side. It's for us to be able to carry out policy decisions, budget allocation decisions, to be able to execute our oversight functions as well. So I'm going to be working with my colleagues to ensure that the legislative side is fully staffed so that we can advance your interests and needs. That said, our next priority is housing for all. Our office does not believe, housing should be a commodity. This is a right. You cannot have a quality of life without housing, especially stable and affordable housing, one that's not breaking your pocketbooks, which is exactly the dynamic that many of our residents are dealing with right now. And, why we were major proponents and still are of a strong rent control policy, because we know we have a great deal of cost burden housing that's plaguing working class residents and families in our city, and it's making them have very stressful, financial living conditions because they're having to pay a great deal of their monthly income towards landlords and corporate landlords, especially just to them alone. So that said, we have a really key interest in making sure that our budget really ensures that, housing is being made more affordable and more accessible to our residents, especially in light, again, we have a growing homeless crisis in our city that we have failed to intentionally address in effective and humane ways. So one of the ways in which we're looking to really move this work forward is by moving funding from the Affordable Housing Trust to the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. And we know that the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority has had briefings with many of the council members. They've also have done a presentation about some of their needs. And it's very clear that while there's some funding being allocated towards MPHA, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority in 2023, it's nowhere the funding levels that they need and have requested. And right now in 2024, we've allocated zero. And we know public housing is one is a public institution. It provides the utmost affordable housing, making sure that it's not, more than anyone's 30% of income, monthly income. It does not exceed that. So it's truly affordable, it's truly public. There's public ownership over this housing, so it's not going towards corporate landlords. So we want to make sure that we are protecting this public asset that's truly helping stabilize working class people. While we recognize that, the Affordable Housing Trust is a city fund that administers low interest financing for housing development, that includes affordable housing. And while, this is a good program, it does fund projects that include affordable housing, but also includes a large amount of market rate housing. Again, that type of housing that is typically cost burden is taking up more than people's 30% of monthly income. This means that, there are subsidies these are public subsidies funded by you that are going to for-profit developers who are driving up rents, Even though, again, there's very few marginal benefits of adding new units of affordable housing. There's not parity in that type of development. They're often building more market rate housing in comparison to the affordable housing units that we typically require. So, it seems to be that the most efficient way to get dollars to our public housing is to move some of the money that we've allocated from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund towards MPHA to meet that goal. Again, we need to massively expand public housing. And because of federal limitations, there are very few ways that public housing can get additional funding. But this is one of the ways that they can. So we see this as a key opportunity to get them the dollars that they need, and ensure that housing is available for the more than 7,000 people who are currently on wait lists to be able to access public housing in our city. So we're really excited to be able to leading that work in collaboration with our partners on council, as well as with the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, to really move this priority around housing for all forward. And then next, this I do want to highlight, why we're super excited for these priorities that we have spent several months, through surveys, through community conversations, through meetings, with our constituents. We've been able to get a sense that these are some of the top issues that our constituents care most about. I do also want to acknowledge some of the challenges that we're navigating and moving and will experience in moving these priorities forward. There's a couple of limiting factors right now with this current budget. It is not abundant because we've spent tens of millions of dollars on police settlements, especially related to the 2020 uprising that happened in the wake of George Floyd's murder by Minneapolis police officers. So this means that council will need to be creative about how we're going to be bringing in revenue to fund what residents care most about. So that's why in the next several months, you'll see our office really focusing on developing a series of protected funds. These would generate new revenue dollars and allocate it for specific types of programming that matters most to our residents. While programming isn't within the scope of authority of council, funding is. We hold the purse of the city. So we have absolute authority over how we either expand what's in the purse, and what goes out the purse. That is all in our scope. So while we can't guarantee, how the executive branch decides to spend what's inside the purse, we can totally make sure that we can create more abundance of what goes into that purse to be spent on the things that working class people care about. And that means looking at how we can assign a carbon fee that can be used only for green infrastructure, or a fee on corporate landlords who are not using their properties responsibly, and to use that funding to create more equitable housing. I also want to note these type of protected funds, they exist literally all across the city. Some of them are, the downtown Minneapolis. They have a giant protected fund called the Downtown Assets Fund that they use to maintain their assets. And we're looking at what are some of the funds that we already have at the city, and how to expand those protected funds. So we're looking at taking that model and again expanding it for programs to help meet working class people's needs, and to be able to respond to some of the key issues that our residents care about, from environmental justice to housing, to public safety beyond policing, towards racism, ending racism. We can create funding to make sure that we are actually supporting the creation of programs that's going to do serious work and create solutions towards these issues. So stay tuned in 2023, and let us know if you would like to get involved in some of the on the ground organizing that's happening around some of these initiatives, and that we're going to be, partnering on in the coming weeks and months. So that said, this is our dream wish that we're going to be going, for over the next couple of weeks, building up for budget. And also, it would be good for you to know kind of what's next in regards to our budget season. So basically what's next is public hearings. We're going to have a series of public hearings at City Hall. The first one being on November 10th at 10 a.m. The second one being November 15th at 6 p.m. You can sign up and submit public comments, and our office is going to be sending out those links to our constituents via email, through our e-blast, through our newsletters, through social media. We want to make sure our constituents know how they can participate in this process and share their thoughts about, the priorities we're bringing forward and just overall what's in the budget. Then what's next is going to be a markup session. This is where council members again bring our respective amendments and make a case for why they need to be incorporated into this budget. That will take place on December 1st and 2nd at 10 a.m. And then council will take a final vote on December 6th at 6 p.m. So those are the dates in which you all get to continue to have a say in what we do around this budget. And again, you can hear us as council members hold us accountable towards bringing forward the amendments and the priorities that we just laid out to you all to make sure that we're up there on the dais, making sure we're advancing them. So if you would like to get involved and again, help organize around some of these key issues and get prepared for these hearings, like if you've never done a public hearing or submitted a public comment, our office is more than willing to walk you through that process. So if you would like, to be involved, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can contact us at ward2@minneapolismen.gov. Send us an email and we will get something scheduled and walk you through this entire process. But again, we're going to be sharing tons of information about this over the next coming weeks because we want to make sure you have a say and can participate, because that's what democracy is for, you being able to participate. And so with that, that's what's next. We're really looking forward to bringing these things forward. And of course, any questions until then, hit us up at that word2@minneapolismen.gov email, and we will definitely get back to you. But until then, I will see you at the next event or at City Hall or via the inbox at our email. So thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.